Well, from the golf course, we switch on to a different stroke and bring you the latest on the Oscar Pistorius trial. And this morning, Oscar Pistorius could have his last meal as a free man. Now, Judge Thokozile Masipa is set to deliver her sentence to the culpable homicide convicted Pistorius in the High Court in Pretoria in just a matter of hours. Now, last week, we saw the final submissions by both prosecution and defense in an effort to sway Masipa's sentencing decision, and it was clear that neither Harry Nel nor Barry Roo were ready to give up the fight.
He's lost everything. He was an icon in the eyes of South Africans on what he has done, what he has achieved. He was denigrated to the extent that all that was left was a rage killer, a cold-blooded killer, a liar, and everything that's horrible. He lost all his sponsors. He lost all his money. He has nothing, my lady. He has nothing left. Serious regard should be given to a community-based sentence, to restorative justice.
I hear that every time I'm in court. Please don't break the accused. Please, with the sentence, be merciful. Don't break the accused. Right? And I always find it so incredible to think that his conduct to a loved one from a family, not only that, but broke that family. The minimum term that society will be happy with will be a 10 years imprisonment sentence.
Now, with the question of jail or house arrest on everyone's lips, joining us on the line this morning to discuss today's proceedings is star journalist Shane Germane at the High Court in Pretoria. Shane, as always, thank you very much for taking the time to chat to us.
No problem at all.
If you could maybe take us through what we can expect in terms of the procedure today and when you think we can expect to actually hear a final sentence being handed down.
Well, I don't think it's going to be a particularly long set of proceedings today. What we'll have is Judge Masipa summarizing the mitigation and aggravating sentencing arguments, and then presumably, because it was only 4 or 5 days of testimony, it shouldn't take longer than a few hours before we finally know what Pistorius' fate is.
And as you said, yes, the judge will be taking all of those submissions into consideration. Were there any witnesses that stood out for you that you thought might sway the judge's decision?
Well, I have to say that last week the defense wasn't really as much on its game as it had been throughout the rest of the trial. They brought forward witnesses that I think the state was quite easily able to dispel, as it were. We had the very emotional testimony of Reva Steenkamp's cousin, Kim Martin, who really explained the financial and emotional void that her death left behind.
Yeah.
And then they were able to bring the acting national director of the Department of Correctional Services to the stand to really dispel the idea that the prisons wouldn't be able to cater for Pistorius. Now, whether or not that is enough to sway Judge Masipa to give Pistorius jail time, I guess that's something that we'll have to see later today.
Indeed, and I think it's been a grueling trial for all involved. And you've been at the court since day one, as I understand. So what's the feeling around, the camp in terms of media and everyone that you've seen attending there? Does it come as a bit of a relief, perhaps even, a relief for Oscar Pistorius himself?
Well, it does seem as though this is the home stretch of the trial, but unfortunately I don't think we can be too relieved just yet, because last week when the state was giving its closing arguments, Harry Nel was very adamant in saying that Pistorius' behavior was so negligent that it bordered on murder. Now, from what I can gather, this seems to be a hint that if Pistorius doesn't receive any jail time, that the state may very well appeal Masipa's sentencing. And on the other side, it does seem as though Pistorius is adamant on not going to prison and that he desperately wants this correctional supervision. So I wouldn't be surprised if he is sent to prison, that the defense also decides to appeal.
Yeah, and I'm assuming you've had a chance to speak to a few experts. You've absorbed a lot of the trial throughout its course. Would you care to speculate on what you think the final sentence might be?
Well, I think it is quite difficult to speculate, but there do seem to be two distinct camps here. There are those who are siding with the defense and those who are siding with the state. So right now, it's kind of up in the air. It does seem as though the state has presented a very seriously strong argument for Pistorius to go to prison, but at the same time, his disability might be the mitigating factor that keeps him out of it.
Well, Shane, thank you very much for your insights. We really do appreciate it.
No problem at all.
Well, perhaps after today, South Africa can finally get some kind of closure. Judge Masipa will begin sentencing proceedings at 9 a.m. today in the High Court in Pretoria. Ewan?